Welcome to this episode of Sleepy History Limited. In our signature slow, soothing, and intentionally uneventful style, tonight we gently wander through the geometry of the gem paper clip. In this episode, we explore the simple metallic history of the gem paper clip. Drift off to sleep as we trace the 19th century. Journey from sharp, straight pins to the perfect double loop geometry of a single piece of bent wire. Consider the paper clip. It is a humble object, an unassuming inhabitant of the desk drawer. A silver sliver of utility that we often use without a second thought. Yet, its existence is a quiet triumph of industrial design. To understand the paper clip, we must first go back to a time when it did not exist. Imagine an office in the early 1800s. There are no staples. There are no plastic binders. There is only the vast, growing ocean of paper created by the burgeoning bureaucracies of the world. At that time, if you had pieces of parchment or paper that needed to stay together, you had very few options. You could use a drop of sealing wax, but that was permanent and messy. You could use a ribbon, threading it through holes punched in the corner of the pages. But that was time-consuming. Most people chose the simplest method available, the straight pin. The straight pin was the ancestor of the paper clip. It was a sharp, thin piece of steel or brass, originally intended for sewing and tailoring. For decades, clerks and accountants would simply pin their documents together. If you look at old ledgers from the mid-19th century, you will still see the tiny, rusted puncture marks left behind by these pins. It was a functional system, but it was flawed. Pins were sharp. They pricked the fingers of anyone sorting through files. They left permanent holes in important documents. Most annoyingly, they were prone to rusting, leaving brown, indelible stains on the very paper they were meant to organize. As the pace of commerce accelerated, the world needed something better. It needed a way to grip paper without piercing it. It needed the loop. The story of the paper clip is really the story of wire. Before the mid-1800s, making high-quality, flexible, and consistent steel wire was a difficult and expensive process. But as the Industrial Revolution matured, new machinery allowed for the mass production of wire that was both strong and pliable. This technological shift opened the door for inventors to rethink the way we bind things. In the 1860s and 1870s, a wave of patents began to appear for what were then called paper fasteners. These early designs were often complex and strange. Some looked like tiny springs. Others were bulky, heavy clamps that looked more like tools from a blacksmith shop than office supplies. They were often too expensive to produce or too difficult to use. Among these early pioneers was a man named Samuel Fay, who in 1867 patented a ticket fastener. It wasn't quite a paper clip as we know it today, but it was a significant step. It was a single piece of wire bent into a shape that could hold fabric or paper together. However, it was primarily designed to hold tickets to garments. Others followed, such as Wright in 1877, whose design was a bit more refined but still lacked the elegant simplicity we associate with the modern clip. We are looking for the moment when the wire ceases to be a tool and becomes a geometry. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine the sound of a wire-bending machine in a quiet 19th century factory. It is a rhythmic, mechanical sound, the soft clinking of metal on metal, the steady pull of the spool, the precise snip of the cutters. This was the environment where the paper clip was born. It wasn't the result of one sudden eureka moment, but rather a slow refinement of form. Inventors were searching for a shape that utilized the natural elasticity of the steel. They needed a design that could be pushed onto a stack of paper, spring open just enough to accommodate the thickness, and then pull back with enough tension to hold the pages securely without tearing them. By the late 1880s, the machinery for mass-producing small wire goods had reached a point of near perfection. This allowed for the creation of more intricate bends. We begin to see the emergence of the gem style, though it was not yet named that. The gem design is the one we all recognize. The inner loop nestled inside an outer loop. It is a masterpiece of efficiency. It requires no moving parts, no adhesives, and no sharpening. It is simply a length of wire that has been taught how to hug. As we move deeper into the history of this object, we see how the world slowly moved away from the sharp, dangerous point of the pin toward the smooth, rounded safety of the bent wire. The transition almost seal myself. Now we transition into the late Victorian era, a time of meticulous organization and the birth of the office as we recognize it today. In this second chapter of our journey, we find ourselves in the year 1892. It is a quiet year in the world of stationery, yet it marks a pivotal moment. While many inventors were still struggling with heavy, spring-loaded clamps, a small company in Britain, the Gem Manufacturing Company, began producing a simple, double-looped wire fastener. Curiously, the jam paper clip the very design sitting on your desk right now was never actually patented by its creator. The shape was considered so fundamentally perfect, or perhaps so obvious in its utility, that no single individual successfully claimed the rights to the gem. Geometry itself. Instead, the history of the gem is recorded through the machines that birthed it. In 1899, an American inventor named William Middlebrook filed a patent not for the clip, but for a machine for making paper clips. In his patent drawings, there it is. The unmistakable silhouette of the gem. It was a silent witness to progress. Middlebrook's machine took a spool of wire and, through a series of rhythmic, mechanical gestures, performed 3 precise bends. If you close your eyes, you can almost see the wire being guided by cold steel fingers. First, a long straight edge, then a wide, sweeping U-turn to form the outer loop. Next, a second, smaller U-turn to form the inner loop. And finally, a third bend that tucks the end of the wire back inside the footprint of the first loop. This specific geometry is what makes the gem superior to its early rivals. There was the Fay clip, which was more of a spiral. There was the Wright clip, which looked like a shield. There was even the Niagara clip, which consisted of 2 interlocking loops that looked like a pair of spectacles. But the gem won the war of the desk drawer because of its nested loops. By placing one loop inside the other, the gem creates a balanced tension. When you slide it onto a stack of paper, the wire doesn't just bend. It twists. This is known as torsion. The steel wire resists this twisting motion, and that resistance is what provides the grip. Il y a gentle pressure that holds the pages together without the need for a sharp point or a heavy spring. The name jam itself evokes a sense of small, precious utility. By the turn of the century, the American company Cushman and Denison began importing and trademarking the gem name, cementing its place in the global lexicon of office supplies. It is fascinating to think that an object so ubiquitous has such a ghostly origin. We do not know the name of the person who first held a piece of wire and décidoband it into these specific proportions. We only know that by 1900 the gem was becoming the standard. It was cheap to produce, easy to ship, and most importantly, it was clean. It did not tangle easily in a box, a flaw that plagued many other designs of the era. As you settle deeper into your pillow, consider the physical sensation of the gem it is smooth to the touch. The ends of the wire are usually cut flat or slightly rounded to ensure they don't snag the paper. The proportions are almost mathematical in their harmony. The length of the clip is typically about 3 times its width. The inner loop is just slightly shorter than the outer one, creating a staggered entry point that makes it easier for your thumb to guide the clip onto the page. There is no wasted material. Every millimeter of the wire is doing work. Every curve is serving the purpose of tension and release. By the early 1900s, the gem had become a symbol of the modern professional. It represented a world that was moving away from the chaotic piles of the past toward a future of categorized, clipped, and curated information. It was the silent partner of the clerk, the lawyer, and the student. And yet, despite its success, the design remained unchanged. While the world outside transitioned from steam to electricity, and from horses to automobiles, the gem stayed exactly as it was: 3 bends, 2 loops, 1 piece of wire. It reached a state of evolutionary perfection very early in its life. A rare feat for any human invention. World, holding our thoughts together with nothing more than the physics of a simple curve. In this third hour of our exploration, we turn our attention to the physical makeup of the gem, the very matter that gives it its life and its longevity. While the shape of the paper clip is a triumph of geometry, its success is equally a triumph of metallurgy. Early paper fasteners were often made of brass or even expensive silver-plated wire. But the true gem is a child of steel. Not just any steel, but a specific grade of low carbon steel wire that possesses the perfect balance of ductility and resilience. It must be soft enough to be bent by Middlebrooks machines without snapping, yet springy enough to return to its original shape after being pulled apart to accommodate a thick stack of memos. As the 20th century progressed, the manufacturing process became a study in industrial consistency. Imagine the wire being drawn through smaller and smaller diamond-tipped dies, thinning it down to the precise gauge required for a standard number 1 clip. If the wire is too thick, the clip becomes a struggle to use, risking a tear in the paper. If it is too thin, it lacks the bite necessary to hold the pages together. Once the wire is shaped into those famous nested loops, it undergoes a process known as tumbling. Thousands of clips are placed into a rotating drum with abrasive materials, smoothed down until every microscopic burr or sharp edge is polished away. This ensures that when you slide a clip onto a delicate sheet of stationery, it glides with a satisfying, silent smoothness. Then comes the finish. One of the primary reasons the paper clip replaced the straight pin was its resistance to rust. To achieve this, the steel wire is usually plated. In the early days, this was often done with tin, giving the clips a slightly dull, matte grey appearance. Later, nickel plating became the standard, providing that bright, mirror-like silver sheen we recognize today. Some clips are galvanized with zinc, while others are coated in colorful vinyl, adding a layer of friction that helps the metal grip the paper even more tightly. Each of these finishes serves the same quiet goal: to protect the paper from the metal and the metal from the air. While we often think of the paper clip as a singular object, it eventually bifurcated into a family of sizes. We settled on the standard size, often referred to as the number 1. This clip is typically 32 millimeters long, a dimension that seems to fit perfectly between the thumb and forefinger. But for larger tasks, there is the jumbo clip, a sturdier, longer version that commands more presence on a thick legal brief. The existence of these standard sizes allowed offices to buy in bulk, creating a world where every clip in every box was an exact replica of the one before it. This uniformity is a hidden comfort of the modern world, a small guarantee of consistency in an otherwise unpredictable day. However, the gem did not rise to dominance without challenges. Throughout the early 1900s, dozens of other designs attempted to claim the title of the perfect fastener. There was the ideal clip, sometimes called the butterfly clip, which used a complex series of loops to create a much larger surface area. It was excellent for holding huge bundles of paper, but it was bulky and prone to tangling in the box. Then there was the Gothic clip, which traded the gem's rounded ends for sharp, angular points. While it looked sophisticated and architectural, the points tended to snag and scratch the very documents they were meant to protect. There was even the owl clip, which featured two circular eyes of wire, designed to provide a stronger grip. None of these designs could match the gem's economy of motion. The gem remained the favorite because it was the most polite of the fasteners. It sat flat against the page, allowing files to be stacked neatly without creating a lopsided bulge. It was easy to remove, leaving behind only a temporary indentation rather than a permanent scar. In the quiet ecosystem of the filing cabinet, the gem was the most evolved inhabitant. It did its job and then vanished from notice, the hallmark of truly great design. As you lie there, consider the millions of these. Silver loops currently resting in dark drawers and folders across the globe. Each one s'il s'entrit, holding onto a piece of history. In this fourth hour, we leave the quiet confines of the office drawer and venture out into the world, where the paper clip began to take on a meaning far greater than its physical form. It is a strange phenomenon in the history of objects, how a simple piece of utility can become a vessel for identity, resistance, and memory. To understand this, we must look north toward the fjords of Norway. For many years, a persistent story circulated that the paper clip was a Norwegian invention, created by a man named Johann Wahler in 1899 Wolper Clip, and for a long time he was celebrated as a national hero of innovation. However, if you look closely at Waller's patent drawings, you see a design that is fundamentally different. From the jam, it lacked the crucial inner loop that allows the gem to function so effortlessly. Waller's clip was more of a square spiral, difficult to apply and prone to bending out of shape. Yet, the myth of the Norwegian paper clip persisted, and it took on a powerful life of Itaunduring, the dark years of the Second World War, when Norway was occupied, and the wearing of traditional national symbols or pins featuring the exiled king was strictly forbidden by the authorities. The people looked for a subtle, silent way to show their solidarity. They turned to the paper clip. Imagine a crowded street in Oslo in 1940 A. Man passes another on the sidewalk, and for a brief second their eyes meet. On their lapels, they each wear a single silver paper clip. To an outsider, it is blilis. But to the Norwegians, it was a secret code. It symbolized that they were bound together. It was a quiet, metallic "we are one." The authorities eventually caught on and banned the wearing of paper clips. But the damage was done. The humble wire loop had been elevated from a fastener of documents to a fastener of a nation's spirit. It proved that even the most mundane object can carry the weight of a revolution if enough people decide that it should. This symbolic power has continued into the modern age. Think of the Paper Clips project started by middle school students in Tennessee. In an effort to visualize the scale of the lives lost during the Holocaust, they began collecting paper clips, one for every victim. What started as a small classroom exercise turned into a global movement, resulting in the collection of over 30 million clips. They chose the paper clip because of its history in Norway, but also because it is an object that holds things together. It is a symbol of connection in a world that often feels fragmented. There is something deeply moving about a pile of millions of identical steel loops, each representing a unique, lost life held in a silent, collective embrace. Even in the digital realm, the paper clip became a ghost in the machine. In the late 1990s, millions of computer users were introduced to Clippy, the animated office assistant, while Clippy was often met with frustration. His very existence was a testament to how deeply the gem design had permeated our consciousness when the designers at Microsoft needed an icon that represented help and organization. They didn't choose a filing cabinet or a stapler. They chose the three-bend geometry of the gem. It had become the universal visual shorthand for the act of keeping things in order. In 2004, the Museum of Modern Art in New York included the gem paper clip in an exhibition titled Humble Masterpieces. It sat alongside the Post-it note and the BIC pen, recognized finally as a work of art. The curators noted that the paper clip is one of the few objects that cannot be improved upon. To add anything to it would make it cluttered. To take anything away would make it useless. It is a closed circuit of logic. As you drift closer to sleep, consider the quiet dignity of an object that doesn't need to change to remain relevant. It does not demand your attention. It simply waits to be of use, a small silver symbol of unity resting in the palm of your hand. In this fifth hour, we move away from the ledger and the lapel to look at the paper clip through the lens of physics and unexpected survival. There is a quiet, rhythmic science to the way a gem clip behaves, a branch of engineering known as elasticity. When you gently pull the loops apart to slide them over a sheaf of paper, you are engaging with Hooke's law. This principle states that the force needed to extend or compress a spring by some distance is proportional to that distance. In the case of our silver friend, the wire acts as a torsion spring. As long as you do not bend the wire past its elastic limit, it will always return to its original nested shape. It is a small miracle of memory. The steel remembers its journey through the Middle Brook machine and strives to return to those three perfect bends. However, we have all experienced the moment when we push a clip too far. We feel the metal give way, losing its springiness and becoming permanently deformed. This is the transition from elastic to plastic deformation. If you continue to bend the wire back and forth in an attempt to straighten it, you will notice the metal becomes warm to the touch. This is work hardening. The microscopic crystals within the steel are being rearranged and locked into place, making the metal more brittle. Eventually, the wire snaps with a clean, metallic ping. This predictable failure makes the paper clip a favorite subject for students of materials science. A tiny laboratory held between two fingers. Beyond the laboratory, the paper clip has earned a reputation as the Swiss Army knife of the office. Because it is a standardized length of malleable, conductive wire. It has saved countless pieces of technology from the scrap heap. Think of the millions of times a straightened paper clip has been the only tool capable of reaching the recessed reset button on a router or a game console. It is the key that unlocks the digital gates. In the early days of computing, it was the emergency eject tool for floppy disk drives and CD-ROM trays. In this capacity, the paper clip is not just a fastener. It y a probe, a bridge between the human hand and the microscopic world of electronics. In the realm of survival, the paper clip's utility is legendary. In the pockets of hikers or the kits of soldiers, it has been transformed into a makeshift fishhook, a temporary zipper pull, or a needle for emergency gear repair. It can be magnetized to create a primitive compass or used as a crude lock pick in a dire emergency. There is a strange comfort in knowing that this 10-cent object, designed for the most mundane of tasks, possesses the inherent potential to be so many other things. It is a reminder that value is not always found in complexity, but in versatility. Perhaps the most famous story of the paper clip's hidden value is that of Kyle MacDonald, who in 2005 began a journey known as One Red Paperclip. He started with a single red vinyl-coated paper clip and, through a series of 14 online trades over the course of a year, eventually traded up to a 2-story house in Saskatchewan. He traded the clip for a fish-shaped pen, the pen for a doorknob, and so on. This story captured the world's imagination because it highlighted the paper clip as the ultimate unit of potential. It is the smallest possible starting point a silver seed from which an entire life can be built. As you lie in the quiet of the night, consider the resilience of the wire. It is strong enough to hold your most important documents, yet humble enough to be bent into whatever shape you require. It is a tool of infinite patience. It does not rust, it does not complain, and it does not break unless pushed to its absolute limit. It is a silent witness to our problems. Always métallie solution. As we reach the final hour of our journey together, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of the digital age. For décades, futurists predicted the arrival of the paperless office, a sleek, electronic utopia where physical documents signed the clips that held them would become relics of a bygone era. Yet, if you look around you today, the gem paper clip is still there. It has survived the rise of the mainframe, the personal computer, the internet, and the smartphone. It remains because human thought still occasionally requires a physical anchor. Consider the irony of the digital world. When engineers were designing the very first email systems, they needed a visual metaphor for sending a file along with a message. Tesserched, for a symbol that represented the act of joining two things together temporarily, safely, and intuitively. They chose the three-band silhouette of the gem paper clip. Today, billions of people click on that tiny silver icon every day. Most of them have never seen a Johann Woller patent or heard of the gem manufacturing company. Yet they instantly recognize the geometry. The paper clip has successfully migrated from the desk drawer into the collective consciousness of the human race. It is no longer just an object. Itia verb. It is the act of attaching. There is a profound lesson in the endurance of the paper clip. In a world obsessed with disruption and innovation, the gem stands as a monument to the idea of being good. Enough, it reminds us that once a problem is solved perfectly, it stays solved. There is no version to 0.0 of the paper clip because there is no flaw to fix. It is a closed loop of utility. It does not require batteries. It does not need a software update. It does not track your data. It simply waits, patient and silver, to hold your pages together. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine a single paper clip resting on a mahogany desk. The light of a setting sun catches its polished surface, casting a long, curved shadow. Think of the millions of miles of wire that have been bent into this specific shape over the last century. think of the billions of hands that have touched these loops, hands of presidents signing treaties, students finishing term papers, and poets organizing their verses. Each clip is a tiny, industrial heartbeat, a pulse of order in a chaotic world. The geometry of the gem is a lullaby in metal. It is the story of a straight line that decided to turn back on itself. Not once, but twice, creating a space for something else to exist. It is an architecture of inclusion. As the world outside continues its frantic pace, the paper clip remains still. It is content in its simplicity. It is satisfied with its 3 bends. It asks for nothing more than to be a bridge between 2 sheets of paper. Let your mind follow the curve of the wire one last time. Start at the outer edge, follow the long straight side. Feel the gentle sweep of the first U-turn glide along the back. Dip into the inner loop and finally come to rest at the smooth, blunt end. The journey is complete. The papers are secure. The desk is tidy. The mind is quiet. The history of the gem. Paper clip is not a story of grand battles or towering monuments, but a story of small, silver victories over the clutter of life. It is a reminder that even the smallest thing, when designed with care and purpose, can hold the world together. Sleep now, held in the gentle, metallic embrace of the perfect loop. Good night.